Welcome, everyone, to episode 227 of Just Joshing. I am your host, Joshua Pentalaresco. I write stuff and podcast too. Today, my guest is kind of something special, Lucas K. Law. Lucas K. Law is a publisher for Laksa Media. Now, Laksa Media is a really cool publishing house because it deals with issues that concern the world today, but also, more often than not, deal with charitable causes as a result as well. Lucas is one part publisher, one part philanthropist. And after talking with him, I understand. So I've had Susan Forrest on the podcast. I've had Claire Marshall on the podcast. I've had other people that have worked with Lucas. And every person I've ever actually seen talk about Lucas, there's a certain pride in their voice when they talk about him. And after talking with him myself personally, I understand why. It was a really interesting conversation. It was a really cool conversation. And like I said, it definitely is the kind of person I really, really am very honored I get a chance to speak with. Let's see. I'm nearly at 250 episodes. I kind of was thinking about that today. It's like, should I do something special for 250? That's a quarter of a way to 1,000 episodes. And could I see Just Joshing going to 1,000 episodes? Maybe. I mean, you never know. Food for thought as we get to our conversation. Let's go there now, shall we?
Sounds good.
Okay, so the recorder's officially on. If you have anything incriminating you'd like to say, make it good.
Right now?
Right now.
Okay, I would say my name's Lucas.
Okay.
And I'm from Laksa Media.
Yes.
And the tagline from Laksa Media is we have several.
Yeah.
And one of them is help us change the world one book at a time. Another one is write for a cause, read for a cause, and help a cause.
Yeah.
And our third one is that using social media for social good.
Ah.
So depending on what we're doing, we will pick one of them to use and use that to guide what we do in our project.
So I've interviewed a few of your people that have worked with you, and the one thing that, like, I've interviewed Vanessa Hardaway, I've interviewed Susan Forrest, I've interviewed a few others that have had stories in your stuff. And the one thing they all have in common, they're all very proud to have actually worked for you. And which leads me to wonder, you have a very, 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 charitable is not the right word. You have a very humanitarian, mission statement in your work. Where did that come from? How did that evolve?
Well, it's, I would say, the woman in my life.
Yeah.
And from my grandmother to my mother.
Okay.
And to the people, my colleague and my supervisor that I've worked with in my previous work. And they show me that there's more to life than just going for the next thing. And basically what it is that when I start thinking about publishing books, I said to myself, why do I want to put a book out there? There's so many books out there, and what can make a difference? And it all comes back to when I was younger. I was, you always look out and said, I hope that in the winters of my life, I'd be busier than what I am than before, and help me to help those less fortunate than I am. And I always have that thought in my mind, and I think it's developed to the fact that when I was in my mid-teens, my early 20s, I was going through a very rough time. Our family has moved from Malaysia to Canada. And during that time, when you move from junior high to senior high, and different country, different cultures, and even different seasons, when you got this hot weather and you got this
Winter must have killed you the first time. It's like, it's like, what is this? Why is it so cold?
The first winter was fun.
Yeah.
Because you have never. I read about snow.
Yeah.
seen it on television, on a black and white TV, and to actually tease it, actually to feel it, to have it, on my cheeks.
Yeah.
That's fun. But it gets old,
Yes.
a few years later.
Yeah, so did you do all the fun? Like, I had friends that came from Vietnam, and they had never, like, I remember this when I was a teenager, we would go see this Vietnamese family, they had never done a lot of things that we take for granted over here. One thing, I'm not saying you did this, but I'm just saying one thing, like, he was, like, in his early, like, his mid-teens, kind of embarrassed, he never did trick-or-treating from her, because he was in an area where he couldn't do that. So, I mean, there's always something, when you go somewhere new, every place you go, there's always that sense of wonder. Because there are things you've never seen, never done, and your world gets bigger as a result, right? Does that resonate?
It does. It's because it's like traveling.
Yeah.
And people always think that when you travel, you go and you have to go outside the country. You have to go farther than anyway nobody has gone to. But even going just outside the house. Going to some areas in the city that you're not familiar with, that brings a different perspective.
Absolutely.
A person can learn something new from that. It's like reading a book.
Yeah, absolutely.
Depending on what stage in your life you read the book, and each time you read that book, it's gonna feel different.
Absolutely. Heck, even if you read it immediately after you read it the first time, you catch things the second time you never did the first time.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's like editing too. I mean.
Oh no. I have a little experience on your end of the field. Once upon a time, I did back in college. I did a magazine course. So you call for stories, and I'm sure it's the same thing with you. You get stories that blow you away. Like, they're good, they're amazing, they're beautiful, right? And they create a reaction. Then there's some stories you make that aren't as polished, or sometimes you're wondering, like, what are you reading? I mean, because that's a big part of, like, your editing is one of the big things editing does is it's filtering. Not necessarily about quality sometimes, but you have a clear vision every book you have. But what you'd like to execute, like what should this be? And not every story, and this is the hard part, is when stories are kind of on the bubble, like they fit it, but do they fit it best? And that's probably the hardest part of your job on that end.
Yes, and the hardest part is that when you got two that's similar, or when you read it by itself, they're different, but when you put them together, they're too close. That might have a different character, a different setting, but at the end you feel the same after reading the book, reading the stories.
Yeah, and that's probably the toughest part of the job, honestly. But once you make that decision, once you make your decisions, I mean, then it's out to ARCs and marketing and editing, and you're probably with a book. How long are you actually with a book before it's actually released and you're actually done with it?
It's at least 2 years from initial concept. Usually the initial concept is more, earlier than that. I would say usually from when we have the submission guideline.
Yeah.
Head down, ready to go. That would be about 2 years from that to the point that it's on the market.
Oh wow! So
I really do have to love the story.
Yeah, absolutely no.
Right.
2 years is a long time.
Yes.
So I know we're kind of going all over the place here, and I hope that's just the nature of this podcast. But I'm gonna go back. You came here and you adjusted, and you evolved. You have a very humanitarian, very, I would argue, but you have one of the more noble intentions in publishing I've seen. Like you try to make people aware of causes. You try to make people aware of what's going on in the world, and you're trying to expand people's horizons about how people live, whether it's the sum of us, whether it's, I can't remember what the last one was called.
Ships within us.
Yes. Yeah, that one. Yeah, because I interviewed Calvin. He was really proud of that, and the thing about that is, like, you're trying to make aware of you, on some point or another. You're making people very aware of the human condition in some level, whether you do talk about mental health or whether you do talk about migration. You're talking about how people feel out of place feel very, very, very both human, both alien and human at the same time. And I think that's a really, really deep concept, right? So I'm curious about the man that came up with this. So,
Well, it's an evolution.
Yeah.
It's a, a lot of people think that when somebody comes up to me and say, Laksa just comes out of nowhere and just get it.
yeah.
I can tell you that there's no overnight success here.
No.
It was something that was built up for over 20 years. Maybe I don't voice it.
No.
Don't voice it, right? It's always simmering in my mind. As I said, I went back with that migrations, an immigrant from Malaysia and to a different culture. I faced a lot of discriminations, in school, in work, for being different. And at the same time, I'm going through my own mental illness, my own mental health issues too. I have suicidal tendency at that period of time. But I'm also very fortunate, very blessed to have family support, a very strong family support. That's why I said the woman's in my life.
Yeah.
And friends. And that instill the ideas of helping those less fortunate than I am, in whatever way.
Yeah.
And when I come to a point, and also at that time, I also start to write inspirational articles.
Okay.
Learning, just to pull myself out of
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's my love of writing. I learned, I figure out the more I do it, the more I did it, the more I love it. I always love reading. It's when I was a little kid, my window to the world is the public libraries.
Okay.
In our small town, way back in Malaysia. We don't have a lot of bookstores. The bookstores are usually selling school books,
Yes.
textbooks, and the only time we have to get picture books and chapter books and so forth is going to the public library, and we have only one library. And so that's my window of the world. And my mom would take me, or my dad would take me to the library once a week. So that's my love for public libraries.
Yes.
And so that's where books comes into play. And so you put that together with what I love with writing. Writing is about words. And I think that a lot of us forget that words can be so powerful. Whether it's written, whether it's orally, or whether it's been sung, whatever, it can heal.
Mm-hmm.
And it can kill,
Yes, it can.
right? And everything in between, right? So I always been taught that to use words, to respect words, and to use it for human good. It's from my grandmother's Buddhism. Philosophy.
No, it's good philosophy.
And so I always want to get into publishing, but of course I don't have the means or the resources at that age, like in the 20s and 30s. And also, I come from a poor family.
Oh yeah.
But we always have food on the table.
Yes.
That's what mom and dad always make sure of.
Which sometimes that's all you can do at the time, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm very proud of
No,
what they did.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so making a living comes first. But I always keep notes and things that I want to write, what I want to do, and when the time is right, all this comes into play. Uh, and I look over to my partner and said, I want to start a publishing company. And he said, to me, and he said, sure, why not? In fact, I had to give the tribute to a friend. I've been talking about for 5 years, and finally she said to me, when are you really going to do it? Right? And I said, maybe next year.
Oh, geez.
I'm always said that maybe next year, right?
I understood. I learned this a long time ago. Like if you want to do something, you do it. You don't need permission. And everybody has that moment where they get very hesitant. It's like, I want to do it, but you really wanted it though, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because it's important.
Yeah.
It's something that has been in me for a long, long time, and it's just I always have some excuses to say,
maybe
not
another
today,
time, yeah.
maybe another day, maybe when I am 40, maybe when I'm 45, when I have paid off this, and I have paid off that, or do this or do that, right?
And then all of a sudden time flies by, and then you wonder what you could have been instead of what you could be right now.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so this friend ended up having cancer, and so she ended up not surviving. So the first book, Strangers Among Us, was in her memory. Okay, and she is a great advocate for continuing education, for volunteerism, for doing social good. She's been doing that, most of her life. So it's kind of, when you look at it, maybe
a bit of a legacy in honor of your friend. That's somewhat as well.
It is, and also it's, we always somebody, like my mom always said, there's angels among us.
Yes.
And maybe she's the one. She kind of knows that, unfortunately her time is up, and she's pushing me into this. And so that's how Strangers Among Us comes to life. Basically, the anthologies that we put out, the concepts, I have in mind of 8 books in a series.
Okay.
And they are based on a part of me. The first one, Strangers Among Us, deals with mental illness and mental health. As I already said before, I've gone through that myself, and it's also struck members in my family, and that's what we're dealing with right now. So on the flip side, I have seen people that I love who has been ill, who has terminal illness, but they have been loved and cared for. And by people, I would term them as caregivers, right? Whether they're friends or maybe in hospital nurses, and just caregiving. A group that we often wanted when we're sick, but when we're well, we kind of shy away from. It's kind of a group that's.
It's because when we're unwell, we need help. But when we're well, a lot of us don't. Like personally, I faced my own mortality with my own trials, so I'm well aware, and I've made peace with the fact one day I'm going to die. But that's a really powerful reminder. Like that, those people that do that are incredibly brave because they're surrounded by this truth over and over and over again, and a lot of people. Especially you see it with athletes a lot when you see them go to hospital, they don't want to go because they know that could be them.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We all have this in the back of our subconscious when you're dealing with caregivers. Is they are dealing with something that most of us don't want to see, but at the same time, it's kind of like a fear of the unknown. right? 'Cause they're literally at the door all the time.
That's right.
And that takes a certain character to do it. It does, because you do see a lot of suffering. You see a lot of joy. You see people at their best and at their worst, and that is not easy, right? When you see and so anyone from the outside looking in, that's scary. So they back off, and that's usually why they tend to be shunned.
And that is true, and that's why the concept for the sum of us is to give gratitude, give voice to the people. And then to the way I see it, it's give and take, and it's some of us and strange someone else out there. In life, we always have that relationship, and it's we give and take. One day we're going to care for somebody. One day we're going to be cared for, and so that's how those two books were born. And the next one came the Asian book, the Asian science fiction fantasy, Where the Stars Rise. It's from my own cultural background. It's an ode to my own background. Something that when I was younger, I was ashamed of it because of the discrimination I face here. And a lot of people are surprised, they think that to find out that the discrimination does not usually comes from the locals. It could be coming from the migrants who comes before.
Absolutely.
And I remember when my first year in high school, I was told by another immigrant that I should go back home to where the gorillas are, where the orangutans are, and to live in the tree houses. And when I went to work, I got people who said that I would never progress in the company because I got funny accent. I speak funny.
Don't speak funny to me, but I get a different time too. It's a very different time, different place.
Yeah. It's a different time, different place, and so you kind of wish you were different. I wish I wish I was different. I wish I was be in this place, in that place, and basically the message for that book is to be proud of who you are, where you come from, but yet remain humble and kind and generous.
So would the fourth book then be about where we're going?
Yes.
Because knowing where you come from is great.
Yes.
Because it preps us for where we're going next, wherever that is.
Yeah.
Right. And so so dare I say, is it a very optimistic? Is your next anthology would be a more optimistic term of where we're going, where we
that's the shades within us in terms of migrations and frigid borders. In fact, all our books. The main challenge to the writer is that the story has to be optimistic, even if it ends up there's a death. Okay. There's always something to look forward to. So to give hope. So that's our that's the fourth book, our latest book, and we look forward to the fifth one.
Yes, which to be named later, I'm sure. But yes. So that is your book. That is your book, Miles. So when you made the decision to actually just go for it, right? Was it a situation of where you just met the right people at the right place at the right time, or like because again, I look at someone like Susan Forrest, for example, she's very accomplished, polished, able to I know she does a lot of the like she's a big part of the editing process. But then you meet other writers who
Yes.
you talk about these causes with, and I know just based on who have been in these collections, like it's a message that speaks to all of them on some level. So it didn't happen overnight, but it was just like once you really got started, was it like right place, right time with the people you met? Did you seek them out? Like what was your, like, how did you go about implementing this?
I would say it's a combination of all the things. You see, I work in the oil and gas. I used to work in the oil and gas industry. And the only time I have, when I have got time, I read short stories. I don't have time to read as many novels as I wanted to.
Yeah, I
right?
understand that.
So I know certain writers that I would love to have in my anthology. And I also wanted an editor who could balance, to give a balanced look, balanced view. And I have several in mind. Susan was one of them, and I asked her out of the blue. I just asked her, right? I said, I'm doing this, and this is my subject. And
She was in.
surprisingly, she said yes. And I later on found out why, because it's a subject that's very dear to her too.
Absolutely.
And then I start to think about, for the anthology, I don't want to be just one genre, one category.
Yeah.
I don't want to be just science fiction or fantasy. I want it everything in between, the subgenre. Okay? And I also want to celebrate the diversity. When diversity is I want to challenge the readers. You're not going to like every story in anthology, and I know that.
Yeah.
And I want it to be different writing style. Some of them that people are more familiar with. Some it might be more literary.
Yeah.
And I also want the authors to come from different backgrounds. And some of them, I have an idea of that this subject would be dear to their heart. So I've done a little bit of research too ahead of time. And as I said, I also want younger writers and to seasoned writers. And I also want different ages too, writers of different ages.
Because everybody sees things through different lenses.
That's right.
Yes. And what I see now at 37 is different than what I saw at 27. And when I go to 47, I'll see things differently than what I do now.
That's right.
Right.
That's the idea for this, such a wide selection. So I went out, and some of them I know, and I asked, and some I don't. But as I said, it's a combination of being at the right time, maybe the right subject, the right issues.
No, like that.
And the other thing is also what message I want to convey.
Yeah.
About mental health and mental illness too. So
I gotcha. So this came up when we all on some level want to be known for our writing. Me too. Like I write stories and things like that as well. I got books out but I'm more known for my podcast. I'm okay with it, just how it ended up, right? you're probably going to be more well known as an editor, as a publisher than a writer. Is that okay? Are you okay? Are you cool with that?
Oh yes, I am.
Yes.
I am. I would say deep down, I'm an introvert.
Yes.
And I'm not an extrovert. I can be an extrovert when I want to.
Yeah.
Okay? When the subject is important to me and when I want to talk about it, I have no problem being out there. But by nature, I prefer to be behind the scenes. And I'm quite happy to have the authors in the anthology winning awards, be out there and be well known for their works. And my job is to make sure that people out there knows their works.
So, if I would be so polite, you're happy that the work is there, and that's what really matters to you.
Yes, and what really matters to me is the message gets out, the underlying message.
Yeah. So, okay, so you're halfway through these 8-book anthology series.
Yes.
Do you know what comes after?
In fact, Susan and I are going to take a break for next year, so we're not going to have an anthology coming out next year. It's going to be the year after, in 2020. Even it's 2020, we already have we already have some invitation out, and we're going to send some invitation out to authors. We're already kicking things off already. Next year is going to come with a single author title.
Okay.
And we haven't announced it yet, but it's going to be the first book of a 7-volume series.
Okay.
And it's a fun series. It's epic fantasy. But
okay.
It's an epic fantasy. It begins, the epic fantasy begins. It's a multi-generational saga.
Okay.
Of betrayal, revenge, love, and redemption.
Okay.
Foreshadowed by addiction and discrimination, when magic is no longer revealed.
Yes. Ah. Okay.
So in a way, it also does have.
It ties into the things you've been saying all along.
Yes.
I gotcha. And also probably good for you because it's a change of pace, and a change of pace is very good once in a while because so for me, I tend to have 3 projects always on the go. A big project, a medium-sized project, and a small project. The idea is I don't ever want to feel burned out on any one thing. But if I get to the point where I hit kind of the wall, I move shit to one of the other projects. And what I find is each thing I do, when I go back to the project, it enhances it. Does that make sense?
It gives it a fresh look.
Yeah.
It adds another quality to it, another level to it, another depth to it. Mm-hmm. It's the same with life experiences, right? If another year goes by, it's going to add depth to that project.
Absolutely. And that's the actually scary part. I've said this with other authors. There's for me, I always figure every project has what I call a 3-year window. Mm-hmm. In 3 years, you should have a project out there because after 3 years, you're a different writer, editor, creator because you have enough life experience now that you don't have that outlook anymore. You're someone different.
Yes.
All right. So I always try to. There are some ideas that percolate forever. They're still percolating because I'm not there yet. But there are some things where it's just if I don't do this now, I won't do it. Right. There's a really tricky balance with that. So.
And that comes from experience. When to go for it and when not.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's okay not to do it because it's not the right moment.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. I have a feeling I know what it is, but I'm not going to say because that's your thing. Good luck.
The title is Burst of Fire.
Yeah, it is who I think it is. That's okay. I won't. Again, that's your announcement. It's all good. So, I think, Mr. Lucas, we have an interview. Do you think we have an interview?
Yes, I think we do.
Okay, so why don't you talk about your latest book, and then where people can find you?
Shades of Weakness. It tells of migrations and frigid borders, and it's explored the triumph of those who are forced to leave home in familiar places.
Yes.
And they can find it in all the major online retailers.
Yeah. And how about you? How can people find you, or Laksa Media for that matter?
Oh, our website is laksamedia.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that was my conversation with Lucas K. Law. Burst of Fire is going to be available real soon, courtesy of Susan Forrest, who's also already been on the podcast. He's done some amazing short story collections. Like I said, just look at my conversation with Calvin Jim. Vanessa Cardaway is going to be doing some cool stuff with him down the road this year, too. All in all, Lucas is doing some incredible things for not just literature, but for life in Canada itself. So, Lucas, thank you very much for coming on my show, and you are welcome to come anytime you'd like. Beyond all that, so I'm making an ebook right now. I'm kind of working on Ala Zero. I got all the little pieces to it now, which is kind of really cool, and I feel really, really very, very happy with just the way things have started to go. I'm not moving as quick. It always feels this way, is when you're going in a direction, it never feels like you're moving fast enough. Like you're doing something, but you're not really going at like 100 miles an hour. Like you're hoping to go, and it never works out quite the way you had in mind. But the important thing is I'm going forward, and hopefully, whatever you're doing, listening out there, you are too. And that will do it for another episode of Just Joshing. Now, if you want to support the podcast, you can do so a number of different ways. You can subscribe to the podcast, whether it's through Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or through Podomatic itself. You are more than welcome to do that. Leave a comment to talk about the podcast. Spread the word, because honest to God, it's always cool. I saw someone subscribe to it on Spotify today, which is always a really, really cool thing. So it makes me happy. It makes you happy too. You can support me by also picking up my books, The Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God. I know I was supposed to have a thing about Ala Zero. I will get there, I promise. But for now, Watcher, Storm Dancer, Wandering God, MirrorWorldPublishing.com. My YouTube channel, Joshua Pantellaresco, has been seriously updated. I just put 10 new episodes up there. There is 108 archived episodes as of right now. Top people like Adam Dries, Megan Hutchinson, Robert J. Sawyer, my father. There's a lot of cool conversations and guests on that show. You should definitely take a look and check it out. Beyond all that, guys, stay inspired. Do your thing. Go outside your comfort zone and do not let fear and familiarity cage you. All right. See you guys next time. And like I said, keep doing.
Josh.